advocate for people with dementia because I too have dementia, and I see that it's very, very important. And in Scotland, I'm part of the DEEP network as well as other groups who advocate for dementia. Well, yes, dementia is very emotional, and when you get a diagnosis of dementia, your emotions are quite heightened. So you could be standing at a bus stop and someone's talking about a very sad thing in the news and you would cry. Your emotions are very, very near the top. So when you're in a very frightening situation, it's heightened, so we would react in a heightened way. So yes, it is emotional. With the named, there was the loud noises. The conferences are very loud, and the different in its tones and pitches. And so if you're deaf, you can get a hearing aid. Well, I just cannot understand why, if this is so, why they can't develop a tool, a shield, an ear shield, where it would shield and block out the tones and pitches that you're particularly having issues with, but can still have a conversation. I've lost my gym because of the noise, because when you go, for people who go to the gym in classes, they seem to think the louder the music is, the more effort you put into it. I don't agree with that, and the gym people were trying to help me. So it was suggested that I would get plugs for my ears. You know, the plugs that you wear when you're swimming and things like that. And consequently, I was putting it in one ear so that I could still hear the instructions that were being given. And the ear I used was this one, and I developed a lot of wax and issues with my ear because the ear specialist, who eventually said, there's a test for what's wrong with you. I'll give you the test. It was an audiologist consultant, and it's called hyperacusis. And she tested me and she said, you're off the chart. I'm surprised you go outside. You're so sensitive to these pitches and noises. And that's when they told me not to be putting plugs in my ear, that it's not good for it, taught me some ear hygiene, which I'd never heard of before. So these are the things that should be in the book, but we didn't know. When the booklet was done, there was no pathway, there was no answers except for our own tips that we found, because there were no professionals giving us any information. So now people are, you know, I'm known as the sensory person, you know, and people are asking me, what can we do? And that all came about from grassroots, people with dementia saying, if you're not listening to us, we will do it ourselves. We're not waiting. We've waited 4 years, we've discussed it, we've done it nicely, we've done it not so nicely, and nothing is working. And we just done it ourselves. So it's not a professionally written booklet, but we done the best we could. And the DVD is not professionally done, but it's true. And if there's one lady, when we sent it off for some production person to put it into a CD, and he wanted to cut out a lady who had speech difficulty, but what she was saying was profound and it was emotional, and we fought to keep it in. Please. So that bit, and it's in the front of the booklet. It's in the front of the DVD, and we said she's very soft-spoken, and after she'd done that, 6 months later, she ended up in a nursing home. Her legacy is, and she said, I love to dance. I love dancing. Oh, I could cry when I'm telling this. And it was her face lit up. And she turned to her husband who was there, and she says, I can't dance anymore. We can't dance. And I said, well, what do you do? Do you dance in the house? I stay at home. And he goes dancing on his own. That's why the booklet's written. The Dementia Can Be More Than Memory booklet, Dementia and Sensory Challenges, came about at a conference very similar to this, with the environment isn't good for people with dementia, and people with dementia were talking about the incidents in their daily life, which I talk about as daily, scary challenges that we have to put up with our sensory problems. So some of the stories is that when we were talking about it, we thought it would be to do with hearing and vision. But you know, we've got more than hearing and vision, we've got 5 senses, haven't we? And people were talking about olfactory hallucinations, and I went, pardon? Never heard of it. And then they started to describe it, about getting foul smells, phantom smells, one boy describes it as. And I said, oh, I get that. I didn't know that was I didn't even know they had a name for that. And that is how we were educating one another and giving it the appropriate name, so that when we're talking about it to professionals, they understood. Because when we were describing it, they never put 2 and 2 together. And one of the funny things about the smell is the smell of burning is very common with us. And one boy said he taught himself to ignore this smell because it is a phantom smell. And then he heard from America a story of a lady who had the same thing, and she was ignoring the smell of burning, and her house was on fire. So it can be dangerous. It is important that not just people with dementia, carers, but other professionals know about that. The fire brigade, the police, these things, because people with dementia can get into trouble for having these real experiences, but it's only real, it's imaginary, it's phantom. So that was the smell, the olfactory hallucinations. Also you get hallucinations, visual hallucinations, which can be quite scary and can cause people with dementia to react in really peculiar ways, especially if some of the hallucinations appear as spiders and you don't like spiders. I mean, it would creep you out and you would be jumping all over the place. Can you imagine if I started jumping all over the place and doing things with my hand? You would be wondering, my goodness me, this dementia is really strange, and look what it makes people do. But if you understand the reasoning behind it, and then people with dementia can learn to either make friends with their scary hallucinations. One man, Edward, he paints them and he sells his painting, and they're very well sought after because they're very vivid colours. And so these are a couple of wee things that we learned about as we were going around collecting people's stories. And I don't like the word story. It's their lived experience. It's not a story, it's our lived experience. So yeah, so that was some of the ones, people going off their food, which was really quite good to talk here to nutritionists and that, to let the carers and the people with dementia understand that it's not that we can't cook. We've lost the ability, although I have some issues there. It's the taste has changed. Your taste and your senses do fade, and you do have issues with the aging process. But you know, a lot of this was happening all ages, all stages of dementia. So we don't know if it's the aging process because you age as soon as you're born. You know, it just is that people with dementia have it, and it's an issue. You can call it what you like, but we're looking for solutions and understanding on it, you know. the vision of, you've been in this conference and the carpets are less than perfect. And I was speaking to a boy here, and he has PCA, which is a particular type of dementia, posterior cortical syndrome or something, posterior, cortical, I think it is. And anyway, he was explaining, I said to him, how are you negotiating the carpet? Because I'm having issues with it. And he says, you learn to ignore what is not good for you, Agnes. But again, it goes back to that visual hallucination. If you're not paying attention, you get falls. So sometimes you have to look at things that are distressful. So these are all so it's the tips and strategies that we need to find, and that's why the booklet, because nobody was listening. Oh, no, that's not true. They were listening to a story and not seeing it as a lived experience and a cry for action. And that's what the booklet was. We don't want sympathy, we want help to be able to live in the community for longer in an environment that's not particularly dementia enabling, but can, with tips and strategies, we can still negotiate it.